I'm excited. I know I say that every week. It's probably getting old by now, but I'm excited. Man, God is doing things. Amen? I mean, you look around, man, it can be, if you watch the news, it can be tough sometimes. It can be bleak. Like even before 2020, the news was rough. You know, it always seemed like there was something going on that like, every time it feels like the world's getting better, then this happens or this happens. There's a terrorist attack or there's some sickness or we read about orphans in some country or we read about poverty or we read about all these things. We see all these things and it can get so easy to feel like, man, the world is on fire. And then 2020 happens. And whatever can make fire more fire is what 2020 was, right? Like napalm. But I just want to encourage you, church. God isn't affected by the fire in this place. His power doesn't stop. His goodness doesn't stop. He is God. Yesterday, today, tomorrow. He is the same. He loves us. He cares about us. He is working for us. So don't be discouraged. If you watch the news, don't be discouraged. If you watch the news, maybe take a few days to not watch the news. It'll help. Let me ask a question. Has anyone here ever questioned themselves? Show of hands. Roughly 65% of you, and the rest of you are perfect in every way, shape, or form. Apparently, that's amazing. No, we all question ourselves at some point, right? And some people question themselves more than others. Do you ever doubt yourself? It's a different thing, questioning and doubting. You doubt yourself? I certainly, probably every day, doubt myself. Am I good enough to be doing what I'm doing? Am I righteous enough? Am I pure enough? Am I humble enough? Am I any of these things? And God's like, you're there, you're enough, so stop. But we doubt ourselves, right? That's a normal, that's a human condition, doubt. It's something that we deal with as a people, especially in America. And I've gone to other countries. I've been to Africa. I've been to South America. I've been to Canada. It was a joke. It was a bad joke. I grew up 5 minutes from Canada. But it seems like in the West, doubt is a thing that we really struggle with. So I started thinking about doubt. So we're going to spend the next 2 weeks talking about doubt. Today, it's doubting ourselves. It's questioning ourselves. So I did a little bit of research into some statistics about self-doubt and some disturbing trends that I found. And a lot of it was in younger people. But this is what I found. Anxiety and depression are up 70% in teenagers. 70%. Now, for me personally, I'm at this weird age threshold. I'm 33, so I'm like kind of in this space between the smartphone generation and the pre-smartphone generation. Like, I grew up with dial-up internet, and a lot of you grew up with no internet. And then a few years after me, they grew up with internet in my hand. So I'm in this weird place. And a lot of these trends started to kind of spike coincidentally when we got phones in our hands. So I didn't either I didn't know many people who struggled with depression, or we just didn't talk about it. That's one of the nice things, like mental health things are being talked about more. So we have some of these statistics. So anxiety and depression up 70% in teenagers, which is mind-blowing to me. This is so sad. A study found that 7 out of every 10 girls don't believe they're beautiful. Just pause for a minute. 7, so there's 3 out of every 10 girls actually believe that they're beautiful. Man, I'm not a girl, so I don't quite understand the struggle of being a girl, but that's huge. Like, I think about the women in my life, my sisters, my nieces, my wife. God willing, I have at least one daughter, hopefully just one daughter. Want one. Like, to not believe you're beautiful. Oh, my goodness. This is where it gets really sad. 47,500 suicides in 2019. I don't have the 2020 stats. Nearly 50,000 people in America in 2019 committed suicide. It is the second leading cause of death among people 25 to 40. After unintentional, accidents. So, maybe car accidents, unintentional, not medical, not health things. Other than accidents, suicide is the second leading cause of death in people 25 to 40. That's our leaders. That's our future. That's the people that are supposed to be carrying us into the next generation, and they are killing themselves. And you don't do that if you don't have a high level of self-doubt. You don't hurt yourself. You don't suffer with depression. You don't think that you're not beautiful if you really believe that you're awesome. Turn around, buddy. You can. Go get mama. What is self-doubt? Why do we doubt ourselves? And maybe it's as little, not all self-doubt is huge, depression, suicide, those things. Maybe it's just, I don't think I'm good enough to try out for the team. I don't think I'm good enough to try and get this promotion. I don't think I speak well enough to there's small things that we doubt ourselves, and there's huge things that we doubt ourselves. Past mistakes, experiences can make us doubt ourselves. Comparing ourselves with others. So when I was in my freshman year of college, I've been playing guitar since I was 15 years old. My freshman year of college, my roommate and our two friends across the hall were all guitar majors. They were fantastic guitar players. They played guitar all the time. It was beautiful, and I can strum and play chords. I'm better than no one who's ever played, but I'm okay. But because my friends, my roommate, he's been my best friend since 6th grade. Him and our other two buddies were guitar majors, and I said, well, geez, they're that good. What's the point of me even playing? And I didn't even pick up my guitar for a year. I just didn't play it at all. And before that, I played every day. I loved it. I played for hours a day. It was just so much fun. I just loved to worship. But because I was comparing myself with my friends who were guitar majors and could play things that I'll probably never be able to play, I just stopped. I doubted myself. I doubted my abilities. Fear of failure. One of the biggest things I think causes self-doubt in our lives is the words and actions of other people. So maybe it's you've got childhood issues because you had a parent that just didn't support you, that made you feel like everything you did was a failure. Maybe you have a sibling who did that. Maybe you have a spouse that does that. Maybe friends, you were always the joke of the group, and they tease you. Maybe it was that jerk on the school bus. I don't know. But for a lot of people, something that someone said, it could have been one time and it could have been repetitive over years, has created this place in their heart, in their mind, where they say, I'm not good enough for this, so why even bother? No one can love me. I'm not lovable. I'm not talented. I'm not beautiful. So I think we have these voices in our heads. Maybe it's our voice. Maybe it's the voice of someone else. Maybe it's the voice of the enemy that's just whispering, you can't do this. You're not good enough to do this. You're not special enough to do this. You have no business doing this. Bailey's doing this book club book study with some of her friends. And she was telling me the chapter they just did, the book's called That Sounds Fun. It seems like a very interesting book, and the chapter they just went over was about being amateurs. And the idea is that we have gotten to a point in our society where we don't allow ourselves to be amateurs anymore. So either you have to, whatever you want to do, you have to be the absolute best at it, or really, really, really good at it. And if you're not, there's no point in even trying. And if you are really good at it, then you better make it a career, or you better make some money off of it. You make some little Etsy shop or something like that. We don't just do things for fun anymore. Like I'm okay at golf. So I'll golf. I'm terrible at golf, but it's a lot of fun. So I don't need to be the best at it to just go and have a fun day, but we don't do that anymore because I think there's something in us, there's this voice in us that says, if you're not going to be great at something and you can't be great at this, then don't even try. Don't even bother. And so I think that really gets in the way of who we're supposed to be. I think that gets in the way of us really fully seeing the plan that God has for our lives. And ultimately, like all lies, like everything that's meant to bring us down, that comes from the enemy. So maybe you had a parent or a bully or a friend or a sibling or a spouse that said it, but ultimately their words, their opinions of you, ultimately, when that comes back to you, that's the enemy bringing that back up. Because he doesn't want us to succeed. He doesn't want us to overcome the things that have been put in our path. He wants us to fail. He wants us to sit in misery and accomplish nothing. Why? Because when we are living a life that is confident, and as we are following Jesus Christ, then we do things for the kingdom. He doesn't need us to fail so like our job doesn't get done. He doesn't need us to fail so something doesn't get created. He needs us to fail because we are believers in Jesus Christ. And when we succeed and when we're confident in who we are and who we were made to be, then the kingdom grows. Then his destruction takes one step closer. And so I just want to talk to you about how we can take self-doubt, how we can take the things that we question or doubt or don't believe about ourselves and flip them on their heads. What do we do when we don't believe in ourselves? What do we do when we don't believe we're good enough? And there's things that we need to understand and realize about who we are according to God. This isn't according to me. This isn't according to some rules. This is according to God. The first thing we need to understand is that we were created. It starts there. That is pivotal. That is foundational. When you understand that you were created, you understand a little bit more about yourself. So, and we know it in Genesis, the creation story. Genesis 1:27 says, God created man and woman in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. And it's like, it's repetitive. It says he created them, he created them, he created them. And I think it's to drive home the fact that we were not an accident, we were not mere chance. The God of the universe created us in his image. Psalm 139, 13, 16 says this. This is David. David says, for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. Let's understand what David's saying here. This is like the most intimate description of the creation of a person. It's beautiful. My inmost being, the very fiber of me, you made. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I mean, it's beautiful. So if we have a God that goes to this much effort to make us, And I believe this. I really believe that it's not like, okay, God set things up, and biology, we know how it works, and just, okay. Genesis says, be fruitful and multiply. And so just go, and I'm God, I'll let that happen. No, he takes the time with each one of us to create us fearfully, wonderfully. I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Like, feel the power in that. Understand that. And all the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. So are you grasping what I'm trying to say here? God is intimately concerned with your creation. He's intimately concerned with who you are at the core of you, at a cellular level. He put effort into you. So if he put effort into making you, that says something about you. That says something about your value. That the God of the universe put that much effort into it. And then you go back to the creation story in Genesis, and God is in the garden, and he gets a bunch of dirt, and he forms a man. So we often hear about God, you are the potter, I am the clay type of thing. So he's making a sculpture of a man. And how does he bring life to that man? He doesn't snap his fingers. He doesn't say hocus pocus and wave a wand. He breathes onto this dirt. He literally breathes life into Adam's lungs. And so if we follow the logical chain of events that went from Adam to us, we can understand and we can see that the breath of God is in us. The very thing that gives and sustains our life. Yes, our blood, our cells, all of those things, water, very important, but it is the breath of God that gives life to us. So, the image of God and the breath of God are on us. That's huge. That's huge. Oh my goodness. There's a song that is one of my favorite songs. It's by a band called Five Iron Frenzy. Most of you would probably hate them because most people hate them. But they're a Christian band, and in their song, it's called Every New Day, there's a line. And it says, beyond the deepest seas, beyond the deepest seas and skies, below infinity, you stooped to create me. God stepped out to create us, to give us life, to make us his children, his image bearers. And so that, right there, that alone is enough to eliminate self-doubt from our hearts. That should be enough. But God doesn't stop there. We were created, and that's great, and that's awesome, and so that's who we are at the core of us. But we were also redeemed. Because God created us. Guess what? Everyone that died in the flood, God created them. They all had the image of God, and they all had the breath of God in their lungs. And he loved them. But they were so wicked, and they threw it away, and he had to do something. And he promised to never do that again, and so he fixed the problem. Our sin doesn't go away. We're still just as rotten as we ever were. But God says, I'm going to redeem you. So in 2 Samuel, it's one of my favorite stories in the Bible. It's not really super important, kind of a footnote. But as David is consolidating his rule in Israel, Saul and Jonathan have died. So the king and the heir to the throne, the crown prince, have died in battle. If you don't know, Jonathan was David's best friend. Jonathan is a remarkable man. His dad was the king. He would be the next king. And he believed so much in David and God's anointing on David that he said, David, you're my king. I don't care that I get to be king next. You're my king. I will serve you. And they were best friends, and they were so close. But he also loved his dad. and he went out to battle with his dad, and they both died in battle. And as was custom in the day, if a new regime took over, a new king takes over, what did they do? They got rid of everybody in the previous king's family. All of them. No one's left alive. Like, it was violent and bad and everything. So this actually happens. If you read in 2 Samuel, you're not going to read all of this because it's bad, but they clean house. They get rid of everybody in Saul's family. There's nobody left. And it's like 5 chapters of awfulness. In the midst of that, in 2 Samuel chapter 4, verse 4, there's this footnote. It says, Jonathan, the son of Saul, had a son who was lame in both feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel. So this kid's 5 years old. He finds out that his father has died in battle. His nurse picked him up and fled because they know what's coming. They know David's men are coming to clean house. As she hurried to leave, she fell, and he became disabled. His name was Mephibosheth. Coolest name in the Bible, in my opinion, Mephibosheth. It's hard to say. So this happens in chapter 4, and we fast forward to chapter 9, verse 6. So David, he's consolidated his rule. He is in charge, and he remembers his best friend Jonathan. And he says, before this, he says, is there anyone else left in Jonathan's house? Or anyone left in Saul's house, actually, so I can show favor on Jonathan, so I can honor my fallen best friend. So he finds out that there's this kid, Jonathan's kid, Mephibosheth. And so they bring him to David. So this, verse 6, when Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay him honor. So this guy comes in because probably he figures, oh, great, David found out I'm still alive and he's going to get rid of me too because I'm the rightful heir to Saul's throne. So he brings him in. And David's like, Mephibosheth! He's so excited to see his best friend's son. We're gonna see one of my best friends today, actually. We're headed down to Virginia after church. And my buddy Pat's going to be there, and they have a daughter, Hazel. She's about a year old. And we haven't seen her in about a year. And, man, we are excited. I love Pat, and I love his wife, Heather, but we're excited to see Hazel. Because your friends' kids, there's just something. You just love those kids. And so he sees his best friend's son, Mephibosheth. And Mephibosheth says, at your service. Because that was the appropriate thing to say at the time. Like, he's bowing down. He's afraid. He's like, I'm toast. He's going to get me. And David says, don't be afraid, for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul. You will always eat at my table. Mephibosheth bowed down and said, what is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me? Let's understand Mephibosheth's status. At one point, he's the son of the heir to the throne. He's the grandson of the king. Like, that's a good life. You got it good. And then in a second, not only is that taken away, but then your nurse who's trying to save you drops you, and both of your feet get all jacked up, and for the rest of your life, you can't walk right. So in that culture, in that society, if you were crippled, you were outcast. You were a reject. So he's got basically a bounty on his head. He can't walk. He's a social outcast. And he's got no way of taking care of himself. Samuel actually tells us that basically people just took him in. Because he was Saul's grandson, they took him in. They took care of him for years and years and years. Like, he can't fend for himself. He is got a bounty on his head. He can't walk right. Like, this guy, his self-doubt had to have been at an all-time high. Because he knew he was nothing. And he said to David, what is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me? Not just a dog like me, a dead dog like me. Like, that is almost self-loathing. But man, David's like, hey, all of the land that was your grandfather's. Not just your father's, your grandfather's. Everything he owned, it's yours. You're going to eat at my table. And in that society, if someone said, eat at my table, they basically said, you're my son. So it's basically like, look, you don't have a father. I'm your father now. I'm here for you. Be a part of my family. This broken, wretched man is redeemed by the act of David, by the generosity and the love that David has for Jonathan. Quite frankly, the love that David had for Saul. And just like us, Mephibosheth is redeemed. Ephesians 1:7 says this. In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins in accordance with the riches of God's grace. And we just talk about this at Easter. Like that's what it is. We are redeemed. We don't have to live in our sin. We don't have to live in our failure, our self-doubt. We don't have to be crippled or homeless or fatherless. We don't have to pay the price of death that is appropriately accorded to us. We're redeemed through his blood, the forgiveness of sins. And the final thing that we need to notice as we look at our self-doubt and why we shouldn't, we are appointed. We are created. We are redeemed. We are appointed. And Paul is the perfect example of this, right? Paul is the biggest enemy of the church. Paul is persecuting and killing Christians, and Jesus, boom, blinds him. And Paul even says that I am like the biggest sinner. I am the biggest enemy of God, yet he loved me. And what did Paul do? He only went to make the whole world the church, basically. I mean, I've got a map in the back of my Bible of Paul's missionary journeys. I mean, he went everywhere. And at the end, he goes to the emperor in Rome. He goes to the seat of all power. Because God appointed him, even as he made Paul in his mother's womb, in the depths of the earth. He said, Paul, I know you're going to persecute my church. I know you're going to stand there in approval as they stone Stephen. I know you are going to work your tail off to destroy what I'm about to build. But I've got something bigger and better for you. Saul was appointed. And so he went. And so we look at Jeremiah 29:11. And we all know this verse, and it's a great reminder verse. He says, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. And what kind of plans are they? They're plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. And when we sit in this pit of self-doubt, as we sit there wondering, what can I do? What can I accomplish? I'm not good enough. These poor 7 out of 10 girls that say, I'm not beautiful. The 70% of people in our country that are suffering from anxiety and depression. You were created and redeemed and appointed. The image and the breath of God is on you because he has something for you. And in order to get that thing, we need to be cleansed, we need to be redeemed, so he sent his son to die for us. Jude's barking back there. So I just want to encourage you, church, as we go into this week, I just feel like there's so much doubt in our world today. There's so much just uncertainty about where things are going. And I think we now live in a time and an age like it used to be even 20 years ago, where if you were a Christian, that was a good thing. Like culturally, that was good, that was noble. Like at least you stood for good values, and now it's reversed so much where if you're a Christian, then you're a bigot and you hate fun, and you hate people, whatever classification they fall under. You're greedy. You're absolutely the worst of the Republican Party somehow. Like, being a Christian isn't a good thing anymore culturally. And so that creates doubt in our faith, and that creates doubt in who we're supposed to be. And so maybe we say, I doubt that God can even use me. It's so big and bad out there, I doubt that God can do anything through me. He needs someone more articulate, more charismatic, more talented. But church, you were created for a purpose, and you were redeemed for a purpose. So I just ask, what voice are you listening to? Is it the voice of failure, of rejection? Is it the voice of someone in your past that's saying you're not good enough? Is it your own voice saying I can't compare to that standard? Is it the voice of the enemy? Or are you listening to the voice of God? The voice of God that says, I love you so much that I did this for you, and I have something huge for you to accomplish. I have something amazing and beautiful for you to accomplish.